Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lena and I make college and book videos here on YouTube, and today I think we're gonna go book shopping. I got to go book shopping recently, a quick little trip at Barnes & Noble, but today I'm here at my bookstore to hopefully pick out a book or two to bring with me back to the school year. I'm really excited to do so, and I'll show you some other recommendations and other books that I really love and would pick up if I had the money for that, but I'm on a budget, so I'm gonna keep that nice and short, but here we go. I read this book in 4th or 5th grade and it instantly became one of my favorite books of all time. Love Sharon M. Draper, cannot recommend enough. This was the first book I ever read by Jacqueline Woodson and I've been obsessed ever since. I actually bought this book on a whim a couple years ago from my local bookstore, and I was really drawn in by the mystery, and anyone who loves theater should definitely check this out. And this is my girl Veruca, the Bookstore Tortoise. Another book I read in middle school or elementary school, Sister Relationship Unmatched. I was quite tempted to get this book, but just couldn't bring myself to get a hardcover. You should probably go read this book right now. And then my family and I went out to tea, so here are a few clips from the actual tea and then the garden afterwards. So it is a few days later and I am back from shopping, back from tea, been working hard this week, and I really have not had the time to film this book haul, and I really wanted to show you all the books that I've gotten this summer. So a collective book haul for the months of July and August, and obviously like what books I got on Sunday, but let's get into it. So I'm not gonna lie, this book haul may be one of the most random, niche, odd, eclectic collection of books, but we'll start with this series of books. The first book is titled The Many Lives and Secret Sorrows of Josephine B. The second book is Tales of Passion, Tales of Woe, and the third book is The Last Great Dame on Earth. So this is a series, clearly, and as you might be able to tell, they were previously library books. I picked them up at a library sale. They were actually free, and I just picked them up on a whim, kind of randomly. They were written in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I think they were really well known, or at least in some circles, because they have reading group guides, there's a lot of hype about them, good reviews. I obviously have never really heard of them before. They talk about Josephine B., who was the wife of Napoleon Bonaparte, and it's told through a series of letters written by her. I'm just really fascinated by this, and I picked up this series for a couple reasons. One, I just want to learn more about French history as someone who's a French major. Two, I also am just interested in learning more about Napoleon because I don't really know that much about him. Most of my knowledge comes from Russia's perspective of him invading and kind of how they viewed him. So I think this will be interesting to read from Josephine's perspective. And the third reason is I just really liked the way the spines looked, and I thought it was fun to grab some books from the library and add them to my collection and just read them for the heck of it. So I'm excited to get to these books probably in the winter time because I'm not going to be bringing them with me back to school, but I'm excited to get to these eventually. So the next book I got was Anne de Bretagne, Duchess and Reine de France, and this is by Claire Lower. I'm not really sure how to say her last name. So I'm a French major, as I've already said, and this is actually for what will eventually be my senior French final project. So this is a book all about Anne of Brittany, and it's obviously completely written in French. This book came out, I think, in 2020. I was doing my preliminary research. I came across this book. I actually might have the chance to interview the author this fall, so that's the other reason why I picked it up. Basically, for those of you who don't know who Anne of Brittany is, she is the only woman to be Queen of France twice with 2 different husbands. She was Duchess of Brittany, which was a separate region of France before it was taken over and annexed. And she also was just a really fascinating person. I have been really interested in her life since probably 6th grade. It's been a long time, but I haven't really become more serious and more academic focused until recently. But I'm really excited to read this book. I've read the introduction, really enjoying it so far. And I am bringing this book to school with me in the fall, so looking forward to reading this one. So the next book I got was when my sisters and I were doing some back to school shopping, and we passed a Barnes & Noble, and one of my sisters needed to go in there to look at some of their planners because she hadn't found a planner yet and was still looking. And I was like, of course I want to go to Barnes & Noble and see if I can pick up a book. And so I ended up picking Igniting Darkness by Robin Lefebvre. This is also tied to Anne of Brittany, actually. Robin Lefebvre writes historically based fantasy novels. Her initial series was His Fair Assassin series, which I read in middle school and am obsessed with. I love those books. They will always hold a special place in my heart. And so this is a duology that is within the same realm, similar characters, some of the same characters and other different characters. This is the sequel in the duology. And I got it in hardback because I got the first book in hardback, and I've been waiting to get this book, but everywhere I go they just don't actually have it in store. But Barnes & Noble, of course, they had it, so I picked it up. And this, I'm so excited to read this. Honestly, I'm a Robin Lefebvre's fangirl. I love her work so much. For those of you who want to know more about what the original series is about, it's set in late 15th century France in Brittany, so it's not actually France, it's the region of Brittany which is next to France, because technically they're not together yet. And it's about a convent of young women who are brought together because they are all sired by Mortain, the god of death, and so they are trained to become assassins and work for the convent and carry out Mortain's will. At the same time, there's other saints that have different powers and different followers and different groups, and they're doing their own things as well. And then there's all this political intrigue of the actual historically based stuff, which is when Anne of Brittany comes in. And I just am obsessed with that series. I've read it 1,000,001 times. This is the duology. I actually really enjoyed the first book, which was called Courting Darkness. I'm just really looking forward to reading this. If you can't tell, these books are just my happy place, and I would highly recommend checking out the first series before reading these books. Now we are finally caught up to my adventure to my local independent bookstore. So the goal was basically to pick up one new book to bring back to school with me because I was not impressed with any of the book of the month options for the month of August, and I was really sad that I was only going to get one book. And I was telling this horrible, I'm being sarcastic, issue with my sister, and she was like, just get more than one book and just treat them like they're a birthday or Christmas present for yourself and save them for later. And so that's my excuse to get more than one book. That being said, I was a little bit of a bargain hunter, and that's how I ended up picking up my first book, which is Rose Under Fire by Elizabeth Wine. I've already read this book, actually. I love Elizabeth Wine. She's the author of Codename Verity. And the reason why I got this book is because it was a used copy, so it was $5. And it's the same edition or format of Codename Verity, so I really wanted to pick this up to add. And I also wanted to reread this. I want to reread both Codename Verity and Rose Under Fire. And I couldn't resist when I saw this book. I love Elizabeth Wine's work. I've always been really interested in historical fiction. And I think that her female characters are really, really powerful, unique, interesting to read from. And honestly, her stories are just so well crafted, and there's so much historical content to gain from. The next book that I picked up, I still hadn't found a new book for me to read, but when I saw Pachinko, another used copy for $8, I couldn't resist picking it up either. I read Pachinko this past June and fell in love. I mean, this may be one of my favorite reads of 2021, to be honest. It just shook me to the core. I am someone who really loves characters in books. That's what I go for. It's what I pay attention to. It's what can make or break a book for me. And this is a book full of characters that just rip your heart apart, warm your heart, sew it back together, then rip it apart again. I mean, this book is truly a work of art. There's also so much interesting commentary about colonialism and Japan's culture versus Korea's culture. And I just really, really appreciated that. If you want to check out my full review, you can look at my June wrap-up where I talk more about this. I also actually like this cover more than the cover that I read, so I was glad to pick up this copy. I also hate hardbacks. This is why I love a paperback, and I'm so excited to have this as part of my collection. I loved this book. Highly, highly recommend. Go out and read it. It will change your life. And the last book I got is actually the new book that I'm going to be bringing back to school with me. I was in the bookstore. I couldn't find any books. I picked up The Starless Sea, and then one of my sisters was like, Lena, you don't even like time travel books. And I was like, you're right, I don't. So then I put that book back, and then I was looking at other books, and then my other sister reminded me that I really would rather have something that's not so deep or serious, nothing nonfiction or like really troubling literary fiction. So just as I was about to leave the store, I wandered back up to the front, and what did I see? I saw Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. This book has been everywhere, literally. I've seen it everywhere. I've heard it talked about everywhere. It's on Bookstagram, it's on BookTube. Basically everyone's talking about it. And I love this book because it's, you know, paperback, it's slim, it's going to be easy to bring with me, easy to travel. And I really also like the cover. I am also an English major as well as a French major, so the whole Shakespeare aspect of this really speaks to me. This book is set in England in 1850, and it's basically kind of a Shakespeare retelling. This is during the plague, and a young Latin tutor who's really, really poor and struggling to make ends meet meets a beautiful young woman named Agnes, and they meet, fall in love, and get married. Her husband is making a career for himself on the London stage, and one of her young children falls sick from the plague. So that's basically as much as I know about the book, at least, and I honestly have gone back and forth about whether or not I'm gonna like this book. I want to be positive about it though, so I think I'm going to enjoy it, and at least the cover is beautiful. And I'm glad that I was able to find a book before I left the bookstore. So those are all the books that I picked up somehow, one way or another, during the months of July and August, my little summer book haul. I am really excited to read most of these books, or I've already read them and am so excited to add them to my collection. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments below, or book recommendations or thoughts on any of these books, and I will see you all next week.